I haven't changed my driving habits. They said, well, at one point, you were driving all over the place, upwards of over 60 miles per hour, not even on a road. And they gave the location. It was a theme park, and he was on a roller coaster. Did you know there's a company out there that's tracking your social media, your driving, your insurance claims, and your debts? And it's not even a regular credit monitoring company. It's a whole other company that very few people know about. So let's talk more about it today. Hi, I'm Frank Downs, and I'm here with Dr. Dustin Brewer, and welcome to the Legitimate Cybersecurity Show, where we discuss different things about cybersecurity each week and how it impacts people in their daily lives, and we also talk about trends and other things. And today, I wanted to talk about an organization that not many people know about, but that Dustin and I were discussing, and we've discussed once or twice briefly on the show that we'd like to go deeper and in depth with. And that organization is LexisNexis. Now, when you are here in the United States, if you're like us and you're US citizens, when you think about your credit and trying to do things like buy a car, get a job, and you're talking about getting a house, things that a lot of people like to try and do at some point in their life, you think about credit scores. And these credit scores are typically run by the big three organizations. We're talking about TransUnion, Equifax, and what's the other one? Do you know which one it is?
TransUnion, Equifax, and
And there's one more that I can't
sneaky
think of.
guys, and
I
I'm not
can't
gonna
I can't
Google
think
it.
of off the top of my head. But you're thinking about these 800 level scores that are traditionally built off things such as timeliness for payments, right? How often do you pay your bills and how often do you not pay your bills? And to what extent do you do those and with what frequency? And as a result, you get a score that is up to, what is it, 850 now, 830, something
Experian,
longer.
yes, an 850.
Experian's the other one, right?
I can't believe we forgot that one. That's anyways.
Of all of them, we got TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. But these organizations specifically are tracking how your reliability and payment because when banks and other organizations want to work with you, they want to make sure that they're working with someone who can pay their bills and pay them on time. It's an understandable thing that, like, if someone's renting you a house or someone's selling you a house or a bank's giving you a loan for something, that they want to make sure that you're a good bet. What isn't discussed about is these other organizations, of which LexisNexis, as far as I'm concerned, is the premier one. They take extraneous data, data that you don't necessarily think about for all the time, and build profiles on individuals. These include things like what you do on social media. They pull data from your car on how you drive, how often do you speed, how often do you slow down, and they also take information such as, the regular debt information, but insurance claims as well. How many times have you filed an insurance claim and what does that look like? They compile all this information and then they sell them to different companies. This includes employers. Like if you've ever tried to get a job and the company wants to pull your background information, LexisNexis is a huge one. And a lot of people don't understand that this organization is passively collecting a lot of it, well, actively collecting a lot of passive information that you're not thinking about and building these kind of shadow profiles. And then it brings up a lot of questions, right? Should this type of company exist? Should it be collecting this type of data? Especially when you consider how weird it is. It started as a research company. Basically, it helps lawyers look up legal documents and things along those lines. And it slowly turned into this, kind of like Garmin started as a GPS company, and now it's more of an active smartwatch company, right?
Right.
And it's changed over time. What do you think of these types of organizations, Dustin? Like when you think and hear that this exists, what are your first thoughts that come to mind?
No duh, I think might be a we've talked about this before, right? And this is like an ad nauseum repetitious. It's almost a platitude, not a platitude, but just like a common thing that people say, which is like if you're not paying for a service, you are this, your information is the payment or something along those lines. There's probably a much better way to say it than what I just said, but I don't speak very well apparently. So
I find you quite eloquent. Please continue.
thank you. So it's not I think for those of us who understand data privacy, security, those kinds of concepts, it's probably not that shocking. To the average end user, I think it's becoming less shocking, right? It's kind of like whatever, like, especially with the newer generation and TikTok, like they just don't care that China has most of their, that a foreign government has a lot of their personal information. They just don't care. And so there's a normalization that's happened with this, the storing of data. But there's a normalization of it, but I don't think people know the breadth of it. And I think, you and I are going to go into that today. But I think that, the should is like it's there. It's not whether it should exist or not. It just does. Should we shut them down? I think would be a good question. But looking at it through the lens of a cybersecurity person and of a data privacy person, it's disturbing. But you're right. I mean, it's there. Like, what do you think? Where do we go from here?
I agree with you in that regard because we do have these organizations that collect a lot of information about us to sell, and we become the product. What I don't like is twofold. One, most people don't know this is happening, right? Most people don't haven't even heard of LexisNexis. And two, it's functioning like a credit bureau, but it's also not classified as one, which
Right.
gives it a very, very interesting stance as far as what you can do and what you can't do.
Not a lot of regulation there. Yeah.
And as a result, it's a lot harder to get your personal data out of them because while you can file requests, that's not as simple as when you're going to get your credit report online, right? You can pull your credit reports pretty easily online and you can identify what your credit score is. You can even freeze your credit. And that's a huge thing. You can freeze your credit information and it is by law, it's supposed to be accessible and you're able to do it and so forth. This is not a credit agency
Hmm.
on paper, so you can dispute things, but freezing it is a whole other ball of wax, right? And that frustrates me, especially when you consider the fact that they've had histories of incidents, cybersecurity incidents too. So the data has been pulled more than once by different organizations that we don't know who they are, and they're it's a real treasure trove. So it kind of frustrates me a little bit in that regard. And I also find, I don't know about you, but have you ever pulled your credit report and there's a lot of inaccuracies? There's certain things that are in there that you're like, that's not me.
No, I did get an alert one time that somebody had used my social security number for something, but I'm pretty sure it was probably just a fat finger.
Now, that's interesting. And I think I might understand why I have that problem and you don't. I have a very similar name to my dad.
Okay.
So, yeah, I am not the
Your
only,
dad's buying boats under your name.
right? And so there's been more than once where I've had to clear up, but hey, that's not my credit card, that's my father, things like that. So when individuals who have generational things, names that are passed down have that, it's hard. However, even without that, it's easier, right? With the credit bureaus, it's still a pain to get this addressed, but just accessing have you ever attempted to request while I meant to get into this later, but now I'm a little upset about it.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Have you ever tried to request a copy of your information from LexisNexis so you know what they actually have on you?
Not LexisNexis, no.
Okay. It is absurd. First, you have to fill out, a form and
Mhm.
submit to them, and it includes additional information. As they're like, well, to make sure it's really you, tell us your social security number or your driver's license or something along those lines. Then they do a process that they're like, well, now we have to check. It's going to take 2 weeks at least, which you and I both know it won't take 2 weeks. But then
Yeah.
they're planning on you to forget, right?
Yes.
On top of it, they say, okay, we've got it. We will now send you a letter in the mail, and that will have a PIN and a URL you need to go to. So then you have to wait for the mail to show up, and it looks like junk mail. It looks straight like junk mail, Dustin. Because at any time during this process, if something goes wrong, you have to start it all over again.
Right.
And we're talking about, and when I did this, it took about a month for me to finally get to the bottom of things. They send you in the mail a PIN and a URL. You have to go to that URL. You
Mhm.
have to input that PIN in order to download a PDF that expires. But
Mhm.
then you have to put the PIN into the PDF. And that PDF, you have access, if I remember, it was like 30 days. So you can look at this for 30 days to try and determine if this is applicable, if this is actually you or not. Now, the companies they're selling to do not have to go through this whole process. It's not like that for them.
Right.
So now we have an organization that has more information on you than the credit organizations do,
Mhm.
right? The traditional credit organizations have a history of being compromised, that data being compromised, with you having little to no control over it. And it determines this faulty data that has higher percentage of faultiness than not, than the previous, let me rephrase, higher percentage of fault, potential faultiness compared to the other actual credit bureaus, that has a proven record of being compromised, has a comprehensive profile on you that you have little control over. This is the type of thing that kind of makes me more than a little upset, especially when you consider that the data can be so granular that it includes your driving habits. Now, that's valuable to car insurance companies, right? To understand how you drive and so forth. But that's also not something I necessarily, you can't prove. I'll give you a great example. Perfect example. There was, and it's still out there with some car insurance companies, you can download an app, and then they use that app to generate a profile on you, on your driving habits and so forth.
Okay.
Do you
Yep.
follow the speed limit often? And
Yep.
do you, and they sell this under the pretense of, hey, it can help lower your insurance rates. Sure, pal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but this one of the guys who went in on it and said, yeah, I'm a safe driver. I think this will be great for me. He got a massive increase in his bill. And when he asked, he said, what happened? I'm using this. I haven't changed my driving habits. They said, well, at one point you were driving all over the place, upwards of over 60 miles per hour, not even on a road. And they gave the location. It was a theme park and he was on a roller coaster. So
You have a need for speed. So
yeah, not on roads. We don't know what you're doing, but it's going to be a lot.
you were
And
on a
so,
fairgrounds just running around 60 miles per hour.
but
That's
we're surprised you weren't in the news. And
Yeah.
we thought you run someone over, right?
Well, he never got caught, so he's all good. Anyway.
But that's the kind of example of how this data can be wrong, right?
Yes.
You can't prove for everything. So what it'd be different potentially if it was easier to correct, in my opinion. But just gaining visibility on it is insane to me. I mean, where do you think we should draw the line for things like this when we're determining access to things like mortgages and we're determining access to things like jobs? I mean, companies pull these before hiring people. Where's that line?
We currently have zero protections for privacy in the United States of America. We don't.
Yeah.
So where do we draw the line? Where would I draw the line? It's funny. This data is there. Whether it can't really be used for legal purposes. So that's an important distinction to make here. But it still can affect your life, right? Which is another.
When a contract is at will with a company,
Yeah. Yep. That's definitely a something. Now, in the case of the gentleman who got an increase because he was on a roller coaster, I actually like that a lot because I think what that does is it shows how unreliable this data is in certain circumstances, right? And so, what's the best way to say this? Clandestine Dustin Brewer fashion. I think there is, an interest on my part to go out and try this and see how much fake data I can kind of produce about myself to make the data so unusable that, there's no way it could be right.
pollute the data, in other words.
Right. So if I could, GPS locations, I'm in Amsterdam 1 second, and then I am in Armenia the next. I am in Florida 1 second, and then I am in Maryland the next, just to kind of throw those things off to say, this guy travels at the speed of light. He is a very dangerous person. He must be some kind of evil mad scientist. Close enough. But, I would be interested to kind of try this out. So where do we draw the line? I think if you're using this kind of data, you should definitely take it as a grain of salt because of these inaccuracies that already happen. I've actually subscribed to a service that is supposed to remove your information from data brokers. I did that for a while. I don't know about you, I get a massive amount of robocalls. I get a massive amount of scam calls, scam texts. It's out of control. And look, I've had a very similar number or the same number for a very, very long time. And so, my number's out there from multiple data breaches. You and I have been through multiple data breaches where more than this has been leaked, right?
Too many, yeah.
The OPM data breach, we both were a part of that. That has, at the time, the last 10 years of our lives detailed the last 10 years of our lives. Any credit issues we may have had, including what they were able to find on us, even credit issues that we may not have known we had, any drugs that we might have done, right? All of that stuff was in these documents because we were applying to a job for the federal government who requires you to disclose certain things about your personal life to make sure that you can't be blackmailed, basically, is what it comes down to. I was just talking about this with a colleague this week. And so, I think for you and I, we're in a different mindset because we're like, cat's out of the bag.
Yeah,
We're done.
hosed.
Like, yeah, they've got our biometric, they got our fingerprints, they got everything. Anything they would want to fake about us, they can basically fake. And by they, I mean the people who stole the data, right? This is a little different in that, we're talking about a private citizen who may have never, knowingly said, yeah, it's okay if you guys start collecting this data about me. But then again, this goes back to my original point, which is, we've been saying this so long in cybersecurity and in data privacy that, if you're agreeing to these 100 long page, terms of service, there's going to be some data mining that's going to be happening on you, your personal device, listening to you. Everybody's so freaked out about Facebook listening in, and it's like, I think that they say it's somewhere in their terms of service that they're going to listen to,
But at what point, I mean, it's kind of like table stakes, right? And this is where it kind of frustrates me a little bit. I mean, even when you buy a Microsoft, and I don't think Apple does as much now, but when you buy like install Windows, there's so many check boxes to access it, and you're
Yeah.
giving your life away, and you're giving your ability to sue away because they want arbitration and no class actions. But you need these devices to function, right? At least in modern society, I am not discounting the wilderness persons, right? Or the
The
Yetis or
off
the
grid.
Bigfoots, right? I mean, yes, I know you can live off grid and you can live without an identity card. There's a lot of hobos out there that do, but for the regular daily person trying to get from point A to point B and be a productive member of society, the access to these tools are table stakes, right?
Yes.
So if we live in a world where access to these tools requires you to sell so much of your identity and agency, I mean, at what point? I don't know. And I don't like using the term "it's not fair," right? But it is. I guess I have to start saying it like this. At what point is it bad business to act to function like this, Dustin? At what
You're
point does the
asking
consumer keep their funds? I don't know.
You're asking the age-old question, right? Of Teddy Roosevelt going back and busting up trusts and saying like, at one point, is a powerful corporation too powerful
Uh-huh.
to the point of where it doesn't have to think about the well-being of the people that it's affecting. All it has to think about is the bottom line and the profits. And so we're dangerously close here to talking about capitalism and democracy and all of those things, but for a good reason, because we are edging into private citizen rights and what organizations are allowed to collect on them. Data at a point, in time was just that. It was just we're just collecting data about you. Like it's just, your what websites you like to go to and what advertisements you like to look at. And now because of a magical internet brick, I don't know where mine went, unfortunately, but because of magical internet brick,
Things.
you can record how fast you're going, where, when, how often you go to that place. My sister, who's a lawyer, actually, she said she was running a moot court case, which is a fake case, but for her students to be able to practice, and specifically talking about e-discovery on this. Is it okay to access geofencing, basically, to see if somebody is visiting, for example, like an amusement park on a regular basis, maybe without kids? How often are they going there? Is this like a plot to do something nefarious at that location? And like, are you allowed to use that data? So on the law side of it, that's one thing, but on the technology side of it, this is 100% possible. Not only possible, but probably happening, right? And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here and be like, they are tracking you, everything. You are being tracked. And there was an interesting thing that happened recently where somebody legally requested data from a data broker on people who visited Epstein's Island.
Yes.
And they were able to track specific people's cell phones and even to their places where they live, because if you take, where you're spending most of your time at night, for most of the year, that's probably where these people live, right? And those are assumptions, of course, and you have to verify that. Then you can find out who was like with just not using any kind of government tracking or fancy anything. They just use a request of data, which is amazing and scary as well. So and we do have there's a sect of us of United States citizens who are like, well, I'm not doing anything wrong, so collect all the data you want about me, right?
They really are. They really are.
And
It
to
just
them, I would say,
it just hasn't made you upset yet, is my
right,
response to that.
exactly. It just hasn't made you upset yet. And look, again, for you and I, like it's hard to talk about. It's hard to show concern or anger towards this kind of stuff because we've already been through it. Like it's years and years ago. This has kind of happened to us already. And so, again, it's something that's being normalized in our society. Should it be being normalized? Probably not. You probably shouldn't be normalizing, big companies owning your data, because your data is just as valuable, if not as important, as any part of your, well, not maybe not any part of your physical being, but lots of parts of your physical being.
So there's a couple points out of that I want to ask you then. If our data is valuable, do you think there should be I mean, and we can state, yes, we live in a full capitalist society. Why are we still giving it all away for free? Right? At what point can we say no? You have to pay me. Should there be legislation then that a person, maybe let's not talk about this in data privacy context then. Let's talk about this in the context of data ownership,
Okay.
right? Because I think maybe if we were going to talk about changing legislation and things along those lines, that might get us a little bit further. Because if you say, well, I have a product to sell, Okay, let's not talk about that. This is stuff that my privacy. I'm actually a product, and I want to sell me. I should. Why, by default, you should not get any kind of ownership of my characteristics. You see this with movie stars all the time, right? Where they're like, "Hey, you can't use my likeness and things."
Hmm.
So who knows? Maybe I would be open to selling my information about me to LexisNexis to use, but it has to come at a better price. I
We're
think
going
we're
to make
getting
you
a
a
bad
star.
deal. Yeah. So do you think that there could be any chance, because we've seen data privacy laws try to get passed through time and time again and never does, right? Outside of California. I'm talking about here in the US. For our European listeners, you've got GDPR.
Yep.
And I love it
And
when I
you own
use
that data, by the
yeah,
way.
I love it when I used European websites or services because there's always that big button in all the settings where it's like forget everything about me,
Yep.
nuke it, right?
Reject
And I
all.
just think
Yep.
that's fantastic. We don't have that, and I don't think in our lifetime we will, barring some huge change. So do you think there's a more potential that there could be a legislation for data ownership and selling that could empower the individual to have greater control over it rather than empower and granting an individual a right to privacy?
No. Let me tell you why. We haven't gotten to the point that Europeans got to yet. We haven't gotten to the point where the majority of our society, or even the plurality of our society, is this is something that they think about, where they're like, they're getting angry enough about it to say, we need legislation. People in the United States specifically aren't, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not a political analyst, but to the best of my knowledge, are not voting on congressmen and women, senators, or any political person to protect the data privacy. It's just not happening. It's
So it's
not.
not, it's just not a voting issue. It's just not
It's
an
not a
issue that
voting
enough
issue in
people
the
care
United
about.
States of America. We still have, to some incredibly arcane voting issues that are still kind of driving what we're doing. And so, no, I don't see this becoming, with the exception of California, who Californians are we have a colleague who we work with who says that they live in California because they want to live in the place that's most like the EU without having to move outside of the United States. I would say that in Miami. Miami is a very good example of that as well. Uh, you know, it the Californians thought this was a big issue, and they voted for the people to get in there and to change the policy. Once again, I don't see that happening in the United States in the relative future. With that being said, you could always have, a couple of senators, a couple of congresspeople, bipartisan, agreements that are like, you know what, we do have to tackle this data privacy thing.
I think this
There have
does
been a
have a
couple of
shot at
attempts.
bipartisanship. I really do. I think that
Yeah,
this could, if there's any issue out there that could, in this day and age, maybe get some people from both sides of the aisle on it, it could be this.
yeah. The last one was, we can no longer eat dog meat in the United States. That was a bipartisan pass. It wasn't the last one, but it was one of the most memorable ones I remember in recent
Wait,
years.
wait.
By the way, this isn't.
Like when you say dog meat, you mean like actual dog or like what
Yeah,
dogs eat?
no, 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 no. I mean, you cannot eat a dog in the United States. It is now a federal law, and that
How
was a
many people?
bipartisan issue.
Hold up.
Yeah.
How many people were eating dog that this had to rise to the level of federal notice? Like, was it when did this happen?
I think it was less than 10 years ago. I think it
That
might
there
have
are so
been.
many people eating dog in the United States that they were like, we got to make a law. This has to stop.
I think, Frank, it's one of those things where it's like, we can't agree on anything else, but what we can agree on is our love for dogs. So let's come up with some legislate. How do we show our love for dogs? We don't eat them, and I think that's how that came about. So look, that was I'm pretty sure that was like a special
I
case.
find it interesting. Cat was not included.
That's actually, maybe it was no domestic animals. I don't know. I don't know.
Man,
I
no,
just remember the
I bet
dog
it
part.
is no domestic animals, or else with enough people who, because dog lovers love dogs, right? But cat lovers are like cats, right? Like that. It's cat obsession. So
The
like if
entire
you're
internet
left out
loves
of that
cats.
law,
Yeah. Hold on. I am going to look this up.
and I'm speaking to someone here who has owned both cat and dog, and hey, congratulations, by the way, on not eating them. So there you go. You stayed in compliance with the law itself. I'm
That's
very
right. If
proud of
you
you.
haven't done it. 2018, the Dog and Cat Meat Trade Prohibition Act of 2018. Yep. So that's where we're at in our society.
What a
So we
time to
just
be
agreed that we
alive.
shouldn't. Yeah, we just agreed that we can't eat cats and dogs in this country. Data privacy, it's up here, man. It's above what we're currently arguing about in this country.
Yeah,
That's why I don't think that, and I don't think that it's not important on an individual level. I think it is. I just don't think it's as important as some other things that that we currently vote for. And again, once again, we could have, and I think we do have a couple of Congress people on both sides of the House, on both sides, who are who think this is a really important issue and are working towards it. Getting them to agree on this, though, while they're still like right now, we're in the middle of a government shutdown. At the time of recording this podcast, the United States is in a government shutdown right now, so they can't even agree to keep the government open. And so, without until they can agree to keep the government open, we're not going to have any dialogue about this. But I do have faith that there will be,
Yeah, I do
bipartisan
wish
effort
we
happening.
were
Yeah,
open right now.
yeah.
I do wish we were open right now. This whole government being closed thing is really, yeah, until the government opens up, then we can talk about it. But even when they're open, they don't want to talk about it. So I agree with you there. I want to ask you another question, and I'm not going to tell you where this came from.
Okay.
My brain, but I don't want you to know the path we got to this. Also, to anyone listening, this is just a completely separate question that is now taking a hard left turn for our podcast.
Let's
So
do
we
it.
have two topics. Taco Bell. Okay.
Okay.
You are a fan as well.
I am.
I am too. And we've talked about Taco Bell. For those of you who are not in the United States, imagine a restaurant, a fast food restaurant that makes, you know, pretty delicious, Mexican food. We've got like tacos, we've got chalupas. I mean, it's just good stuff. Tastes good. I'll say tastes good. What's also interesting about this place, and Dustin and I have had discussions more than once, the prices are getting a little stupid. A little previously its
Crazy.
claim to fame is you could go in with like $3 and you could come out fed and it was
You
great.
could. Yep.
Now their base taco, which is just a hard shell, some meat and lettuce and cheese, $2. A little over the top if you ask me, especially considering what you're purchasing. Anyway, it came out in the last recently, and this is I promise I'm going in a direction here
Okay.
that Taco Bell is a lot more advanced and sophisticated in the logistics of restaurant operation than most organizations, specifically in that they're always trying new things, not just on their menu, but in delivery. And they put AI into
Taco.
their restaurants. Into their what?
They've created an AI taco.
Man.
This AI taco will rule all of us.
It's like from Rick and Morty, that butter bot, where it's like, what is my purpose?
What is my purpose?
Yeah. Will you give us butter? No, right? The taco bot would be like, what's my purpose? Make a taco. Anyway, it has gone poorly. And there's a few videos out there where one of the ways they tried to implement AI is that when you place your order at the drive-through, it would take your order. It got so many orders wrong
Yeah.
that I want to say in one instance it gave someone like 100 tacos or and then like
I think it was like 100,000. I think it was
yeah,
like an
tried to give
insane amount of tacos.
it's the insane amount of tacos.
Yeah.
Now, I am used to that amount of sauces whenever I place an order because they're like, you want any sauce with that? And I'll be like, yeah, I'll take a packet or two of fire. They're like, boom. And you know what? I'm not angry. I will use more than 10 sauce packets of fire sauce. But my question for you here is, one, why did that not work? And two, do you think we're starting to see maybe a realization? Because now they've pulled it out, right? They've pulled out the AI implementation.
Mhm.
McDonald's tried a little something like this too, and they pulled it out. Are we starting to maybe find the practical limits of AI application? And should we be thanking Taco Bell for that?
Yes and yes.
You know,
100%. It's a great example of how AI is just not ready, not to the level that people think it is. Let me put it that way.
will it though? Because we keep applying more compute and more compute and more compute, and it's still, as of like a month ago, still not able to get a drink order right.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it makes me wonder is there hope now that no matter how hard we try, humans will still be needed for some, you're going to need people. You're going to need people. It's like,
You're always, yeah. I mean, I think you're always going to need people. There's always going to be an uncanny valley type effect that's going to happen when using AI. Whether it thinks you ordered 100,000 tacos, or the AI agent you're talking to on the phone sounds a little funny, or the picture that you're looking at doesn't quite look right. Right, the uncanny valley kind of effect that happens. And if you don't know what that is, look it up. It's just basically when looking at a face that's been generated by AI, that you can kind of tell there's just something off about it and upsetting about it. And so I think what we're seeing here is, you're right. It's the beginning of the bleed through of the same thing that happened with machine learning in cybersecurity. Remember
a
that the
word.
machine learning craze, which is basically the AI craze, but don't tell anybody. We just
I know they get real upset. They get real upset if you do that.
the machine learning craze, which was a big thing. And then it was like, well, what do you do for machine learning? And if you'd ask a vendor that, they'd be like, they wouldn't really have a great answer for you. The same thing, we have had true innovation in IT in recent years. We've had cloud breakthrough, which is amazing. It just is. I know it's just somebody else's computer. That's very true. However, it's a lot of somebody else's computers and a lot of cheap somebody else's computers, and you can create this amazing computing power for minimal of what it would be if you had to build it yourself.
Yeah,
So
but
there are lots of
aren't
innovations.
we paying for it in other ways? Like our energy bills have gone up
That's a
gnarly.
good
Like,
point. Yeah, I mean everything's got just cause and effect, right? And so yes, we are paying for it in other ways, and we are paying for it now. We are paying. I think we're starting to see the prices go up on cloud computing too, where it's like this is kind of it's like all the streaming services. We're now at a place where we're back to paying a cable bill.
and you're still paying your cable bill because they're the internet companies. So
That's
like that's
right.
the one that like always gets me. They're like, yeah, but I don't pay for cable. I'm like, stop saying that. You're not paying for traditional stream like channel content. You're still paying for connectivity. It's still the cable's still anyway. Sorry,
Yeah. No, I
that's not
get it.
aimed at you. That's just a general statement of fields from
No,
me.
and I don't pay a cable company. I have a fiber company that I pay. It only does fiber. They don't do it. So I'm the exception to that rule, but
There you go.
there I am. I'm trying to justify. There's my cognitive dissonance to the whole thing. But yeah, I think you're right. I think this is like the cracks starting to form in the very basics of like what this means. And if you think about that from like a SOC perspective, like, oh, my SOC is an AI SOC,
Holy
and my SOC
Toledo,
uses
yeah.
AI. So man, you're gonna have 100,000 tacos show up at your company's doorstep because the SOC AI is gonna order that from Taco
That'd be
Bell.
the better
Basically,
outcome.
what it comes down to.
That'd be like a happy accident. Like you'd be like, all right, we got to get this sorted, but you'd at least get to keep like 10 of those tacos.
You
Is
would
my
eat some
point.
of the tacos. Yeah, the
Whereas
people
like
in your
all the other
organization would get
places,
something. Yeah.
yeah, I'm seeing all these ones where like they're pushing code to production and then ruining a company in like 10 seconds. Where it's
Yes.
like that's not a surprise tacos. That's
Nope.
that's worse.
that, the tacos are full with poo and knives.
No, yeah, and career limiting events. So yeah. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening today. We did take a little bit of a hard turn, but you should be aware that organizations like this exist. LexisNexis is up to a lot of. It's a credit company that is not beholden to the same standards as other credit companies, and that is something that you should think about and decide if it makes you uncomfortable. Anyway, until next week, I'm Frank, and I'm here with Dustin. Thanks for listening, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you then.